Hey guys, I'm back again. On the last video, I had a couple of questions, actually quite a few questions, in regards to shaft comparison between the different types of shafts. One of which was carbon fiber versus traditional wood. Now, I'm not going to get into the carbon fiber aspect on this one, but there are three other aspects that I would like to touch on, and both are considerably important. And the three that I'm going to cover tonight are going to be the natural wood shaft, the flat laminated shaft, and a radially laminated shaft. Now, all three serves its own purpose, and all three are trying to accomplish something. Now, we'll begin with the natural wood shaft. Now, with a natural wood shaft, you have a situation to where you have the grain going down the shaft. It's been done naturally in nature. It hasn't been altered by man, and you have different thicknesses of the grains. Okay, and now the ring patterns. As a tree grows, when it first starts to grow, the rings are really far apart, and the older the tree becomes, the closer together those rings become. So depending on where that particular shaft blank being a 1 by 1 by 30 or 31, depending on where it's cut, will determine how close those rings are. Okay, and as I mentioned in the previous video, I shoot for a shaft that has a ring spacing per inch of between 14 and 16. That's my happy medium. If you'd like to find out why, click the video that I covered this on. It'll cover it for you. I don't want to go over it again because a lot of people already heard it. Now, the ideal thing that you're looking for when it comes to a shaft is optimal power with the least amount of deflection. Okay, now this can be accomplished naturally, but limited nonetheless. You ideally, again, you want to find a shaft that has between 14 and 16 grains per inch. That's going to be your happy medium, because the more grain and the more rings per inch, the more power you're going to have in that shaft. But you're also going to have more deflection with the more rings that you have. Now, the same thing applies on the other end, as I mentioned before. The fewer rings per inch, the farther they're spaced apart, the less power or the more whippy the shaft becomes. So therefore, you're not going to have as much power, but you will have less deflection because it'll be more whippy. Now, if you're going to settle with a natural shaft, natural solid maple shaft, I would stick with the 14 to 16 grains per inch. That's going to be your happy medium. I think you'll find that to be satisfactory. You're going to have the benefit of both worlds. You're going to have positional ability when you're trying to control the cue ball. You're going to have the best pocketing ability and best feedback, and you'll have an adequate amount of power in it. Now, you can go to one extreme or the other with the natural wood. You can go to a lot more grains per inch, which is a very stiff shaft. It'll generate a lot of power with a little bit of effort, but you had better be in a position to where you can allow for the squirt or the deflection that is going to embark onto the cue ball. Because two things have to happen. Okay, when it comes to deflection, two things have to happen. This is a given. When you say this is your cue ball, when you stroke, upon impact, one of two things will happen. Either, I'll try to do this vertically so you can see it. Either the shaft is going to go straight through the ball and the cue ball is going to squirt one way, so you're putting right-hand English on it. The shaft, you putting right-hand English on it, you hit it on the right-hand side, one of two things will happen. Either the shaft will go straight through and the cue ball will squirt to the left, or with a floppier shaft, the shaft will hit and it will reflect away upon impact, and the cue ball will take a much straighter path. Not perfectly straight, but straighter. And that is, in essence, low deflection. So, again, third time, sorry. Again, on the natural wood, If you're okay with deflection and you know how to allow for it, and you want all the power that you can get out of it, you want a higher ring per inch shaft, 20 plus rings per inch. If you want a least amount of deflection as possible without altering the shaft or the wood, then you can go with fewer grains per inch. But remember, you're going to have less deflection, which is good, but you're also going to have a situation to where you really got to get into it to put the cue ball where you want it to put it and where you want to make it go. So the bottom line for me and the cues that I make, and I tell everybody the same thing: shoot for a 12 to 16 rings per inch shaft. It's the best of both worlds. Now the next thing that you'll see is the flat laminated shaft. Now that one is an attempt to do a couple of things. Mainly it's about radial consistency, because if you take, and this applies to the natural wood shaft or a flat laminated shaft, if you take your shaft and you put a little dot on it somewhere, it doesn't matter where, and you shoot 10 shots in the corner pocket, identically the same shot. You put your couple spots on the pool table, set it up every time so you know it's the same, and you shoot 10 shots, and then you rotate that cue just 90 degrees, rotate it 90 degrees, shoot the exact same 10 shots. I guarantee you that you will not have the same outcome. Yet you will pocket the ball probably. The longer the shot, the more you'll see this happen. But what you're going to end up seeing is that the spine of the wood of the shaft is going to take effect and determine how much squirt the object ball has. It's going to determine how much power you're putting into the ball, and it's going to determine how accurate the shot is. And the reason being is because the spine of the shaft is determined by, well, let me rephrase that, make it a little bit easier to understand. The spine of a shaft is basically, if you take and look at the grains vertically, okay, they're going this way. If you're looking at the back end of a shaft, they're going in line. Well, where the grains are perpendicular to the outside of the shaft, say this is your shaft and the grains are pointing this way, that is the strongest part of the cue, and that is the spine of the shaft. Now you have two spines. You have one on this end and obviously one on this end. But that's going to be the stiffest part of the shaft, is your spine. Now, this is why it directly relates to the orientation in which you have the shaft positioned when you're playing. Sometimes you'll go out and you shoot lights out. You can't miss a shot. And you wonder, well, what the hell happened? You know, the next night you go out, you couldn't hit the left side of a barn. And the reason, potentially the reason, is because of shaft inconsistency. You're holding it in a different position. I don't mean from the butt end to the shaft. I mean radially. You're holding in a different position. So if you, again, you should test this. If you put a dot on that shaft and you shoot 10 shots, like I said earlier, you shoot 10 shots with it in one position, and then you make them long shots so you can really see this happen. And then you rotate the cue 90 degrees, shoot the same 10 shots. Rotate it 90 degrees again, shoot the same 10 shots. And finally, rotate it 90 degrees again to where you're back to where you were, and shoot the same 10 shots again. You're gonna find, and this is hands down, you're gonna find a difference in the outcome of the shot. Yes, you may make the shot, but you will still notice differences. Pay attention to where the cue ball is going as far as positional play. Pay attention to what side of the pocket is the object ball going into. Is it hitting the left hand side of the pocket and going in, the right hand side of the pocket going in, straight in the middle going in? Those are the things that you need to look for so you can tell the difference in what I'm talking about. Now, with the flat laminated shaft, again, what we're trying to accomplish with that is radial consistency or better radial consistency. And the way that is done is you take a shaft blank, pretend this is a shaft blank. You take a shaft blank, which is a 1 inch by 1 inch by 30 inches long, whatever. And then you take it and you put it in the bandsaw, however you want to cut it, and you rip it into sections, okay? Once you have those sections, you keep it in the same orientation, all the grains still lined up and going the same way. But what you do is you take it apart, you cut it, and you glue it back together. But when you do so, you take one and you flip it. You glue it up. You take the other one, you flip it, and you turn it 180 degrees, and you glue it up. You take the next one and you flip it, don't turn it, glue it up. Take the next one, flip it, 180 degrees, glue it up. And then the next one, don't flip it, turn it over, glue it up. Now, two things are happening when you do this. One is you are reorienting the ring structure and the grain structure, and you're having them almost fight against each other, okay? Because you're flipping one and then you're rotating the other one. All right, so you're mixing those grains up, and they're constantly battling each other, because the thing about grain is it wants to be straight. Okay, I know it sounds weird, but grain in wood wants to be straight. As the tree grows and the rings grow around it, each ring around it is protecting the ring before it, and the ring before that, and the ring before that, and so on. So if I were to put you on a lathe, say you were a tree, and I cut you off, and I cut a log out of you, okay? Well, you got the heart of the wood, and then you got all the rings around the wood to come out. And I put that on a lathe, and remember, you are the heart of the wood, and you have hundreds of people holding you in place. You can't move, right? I put you on a lathe and make a couple passes and take off some of that wood, take off some of those layers, take off some of the people holding you in place. All of a sudden, you can move a little easier. It's a little less effort to move. Well, guess what? You're going to, because you can. Now, there will come a point that the wood will stop moving. But here again, that's what cutting these and flipping them and rotating them and putting them back together and gluing them back together is trying to accomplish. It's trying to reduce the likelihood of that happening. Now, there's pros and cons to that, and we're still talking about flat laminated shafts. There's pros and cons to that. One of the pros is going to be that it will be a more consistent shaft than a natural untouched wooden shaft in most cases. It can be, this is another pro, it can be more predictable because it's flat laminated. One of the cons to this is it's going to be a heavier shaft, okay? Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, well, it's the same wood. Wood is wood. How's it gonna be heavier? The reason it's gonna be heavier is because of the adhesive that you use to glue the laminates together. Adhesive of any kind is almost always heavier than the wood itself. So when you glue these laminates together, and you think about this, the more laminations that you have, the more glue you have, and the more glue you have, the more weight you have added, okay? And this, again, deflection is all about the front third of the shaft. We talked about that in the last video. So in theory, you are adding more weight because of more adhesive at the front end of that shaft, and therefore you're adding more deflection overall. Yep, you gained a little more consistency, so it's going to shoot the same, or more so the same, no matter where you hold it, what rotation you have it in the shaft. But now you have to allow for the added deflection that you put into it. And that is where we come into the coring and drilling out the front of the shaft and filling it back in with foam and things like that. That's the reason that we do that, is because we are taking away the weight that we just added, so that we can accomplish the same thing, but with added features. The added feature being the flat lamination reoriented, like I showed you earlier. In comparison between the two being a natural wood shaft and a flat laminated shaft. Hang on, I smoke a lot, I'm sorry. The difference between the two being a natural wood shaft and a flat laminated shaft, is going to be mainly radial consistency, okay? And honestly, now this is opinion, this isn't fact, but in my opinion, I think that is really the only benefit that you have between the two. Now, you have a third technique that we use, which is a radially laminated shafts. When I say radial, and I don't like to speak brands, but in this case I have to, say your Predator 314s and things like that. That would be a radial shaft, okay? Now, with that one, we kind of run into everything that I said before, but with an added benefit. That added benefit being even more radial consistency. And I have to admit that with a radially laminated shaft, it virtually does not matter what point you're holding that shaft. Whether you rotate the cue 90 degrees, 10 degrees, 360 degrees, 14 degrees, it doesn't matter. It's gonna be more consistent. If you shoot one shot with it in this position, and then the next shot you shoot, you rotated the cue, you shoot it again, you're going to get more or less the same outcome. And that's kind of the reasoning behind the radially laminated shaft. It has nothing to do with deflection, it has nothing to do with power. It's about radial consistency. Okay, so don't get it twisted. You know, don't get it confused. The only reason, primarily, there's two reasons actually. The only reasons that we do a flat lamination and a radial lamination is about radial consistency, so that no matter how you hold this cue, it's going to shoot the same repetitively. Now, again, the same thing applies with the deflection on a radially laminated shaft. You know, you have to glue that together too. So the more pies you have in that radial lamination, the more glue you have to add to hold it together. So therefore, the more weight you're adding to it. In most cases, not so much as a flat laminated shaft. Typically flat laminated shafts will have more laminations than a radially laminated shaft. So therefore, again in theory, you will have less adhesive holding the fewer pies together to make that lamination shaft, that laminated shaft. What to take away from what I've just said? With a natural wooden shaft, you are going to have a situation to where you have to make a choice between fewer rings per inch or more rings per inch to develop what fits for you, with 14 to 16 rings per inch being the median, your baseline. Okay, and that's going to work for most people. The problem that you're going to have, and this is just a recap, the problem that you're going to have is that depending on how you hold that shaft or cue, depending on what position that shaft is in radially as you rotate it, will determine how you execute that shot, or rather the end result of how that shot was executed. Now, If you mark that shaft in a certain spot and you can guarantee that you're going to hit it the same way every time, then you're going to be more consistent with a natural wooden shaft. But the problem with that is a chain reaction. The problem with hitting the shaft in the same spot every time, yep, you're going to alleviate the inconsistency of radial consistency, that is. But now you're hitting the tip in the same spot every time. And if you hit the tip in the same spot every time, what's going to happen? It's going to compress the tip in that one spot. It's going to make it harder, and you're going to start miscuing. It's going to start getting glossy on you. It's going to cause more maintenance to be done, that kind of thing. So you don't want to hold the cue in one position all the time. You want to be able to rotate that cue continuously, randomly, and not pay attention to it. Lord knows we don't, as pool players, we don't need something else to think about. You know, we already make 100 decisions before we get to our next shot. We don't have to think about, well, what position is my shaft in as well. That's just an added thought. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that a radially laminated shaft is better overall as far as radial consistency. Now keep in mind that this has nothing to do with power. It really has nothing to do with feedback. What I mean by feedback is once you hit the cue ball, the impact of the cue ball strike will resonate from the tip to the ferrule to the shaft to the joint pin to the joint collar down to the butt to the handle down to your hand. And that is where you develop touch and feel. You know, that's the one thing that I can't teach is touch. But that's where you get it from. Every cue will be different. Doesn't matter what it is. But overall, I do think that a radially laminated shaft, as far as consistency, is going to be ideal over the flat laminated, even over the natural wood. Now, that is not to say that those of us that have been playing, you know, for 40, 45 years have always used a wooden shaft, natural wooden shaft, non-modified. We've learned to adapt for it, and we're okay with it. Newcomers, or people, when I say newcomers, I mean people that have been playing for about 3 to 5 years, grab you up a radially laminated shaft. Try it out. Give it an honest effort. I think it can help you. Now, I keep talking about the radially laminated shaft, and I don't offer them. I don't put them on my cues. I build a natural wooden shaft. And I think the reason that I don't offer them personally is because it's oversaturated. You have too many brands out there that are doing the same thing. Okay? And, well, I don't want to add to that. I mean, there's only so much you can do until that's just it. Now all of a sudden you're copying somebody. So, again, at the end of the day, it all comes down to 3 things. One is overall deflection, 2, and the reduction of, 2, radial consistency, and 3, power. And the reason I keep emphasizing power is because the more power that your cue can generate for you, the less effort you have to put into the cue to make it do what you want it to do. And in turn, what that's going to do for you as a player is it's going to make you more consistent, more accurate. And the reason that is because, now think about it. If you know that you have to hit a shot hard, it means that you have to stroke a little faster to create more inertia when you hit the ball. So the faster you stroke that cue, the less accurate you are. Put it in perspective. If I had a shot here and I have to hit it real hard, and I have to hit that same spot twice on the cue ball, I line it up, I get my point where I need to be, and I stroke it real fast. What's the odds of me hitting it at exactly that point? that I intended to. It's very slim. Close, yes. Exact, no. Versus going real slow. If you could stroke a cue ball, if you could stroke your cue this slow and still hit your ball and do your thing, how accurate would that be? That would be a lot more accurate, because now you can take your time, you're going slower, and you can see more of what you're doing. Hence, the more power your shaft has in your cue, the slower you can stroke, leading to more accurate shots. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. But this video, again, was just to answer a few questions that some of our subscribers had related or based on the last video that I did. Hopefully this helps you make a decision on where you need to be when picking out a shaft. All three have their pros and cons. Personally, and this is just me, I like a natural shaft, non-modified. It's just what I'm used to. I've been playing for it. I've been shooting pool now. I've probably got, let's see, 44 years table time. I'm 50 years old, so I got 44 years table time. I began when I was 6, and I've always used a natural shaft. If you hand me a flat laminated shaft or you hand me a radially laminated shaft, I'm going to be lost. I understand the concept, I can appreciate the concept, and I agree with the concept, but it's just not for me. If you've only been playing for 3, 4, 5 years, sure, go ahead and get you one. Try it out. I think in the long run it's going to benefit you, but here again, if it isn't properly made, then it's a drawback. It's not a benefit. The reason being is because the laminations can break apart. Okay, now the glue itself isn't going to break apart. The glue is actually stronger than the wood that's being glued together. Once a shaft splits, with it being laminated, if you look at it, hopefully you'll never have to, but if a radial laminated or flat laminated shaft splits, and then you look at it where it's blurred, where it broke, you're going to see wood. You're not going to see a glue. It's because the glue is stronger. You're breaking the wood away from each other. But that is a risk that you run. If built properly, it's a limited risk, virtually none. Let's see, is there anything else that I can mention about that? No, I think that about covers it. Well, no, one more thing. With your flat laminations and your radial laminations, you can have more aggressive taper profiles, okay? Which means you can have a smaller shaft diameter, if that's what you want. But as I mentioned also in my earlier video, the smaller your shaft diameter, the more accurate you have to be, okay? The larger your shaft diameter, the more forgiving the shaft is going to be for you. So, and again, I covered all this in the first video, but I'll just hit on it now since we're talking about it. But your larger the shaft diameter, the more forgiving the shaft is going to be, and the more shots you're going to put in the back of the pocket, especially on long shots. If you find yourself wobbling balls, a larger shaft diameter is going to cover that to a degree. But it's just a band-aid. You really need to practice your stroke. You get your stroke in tune, then it won't really matter what size diameter you're using, other than how it feels going through your bridge hand. Some people say, well, I can't use a larger shaft diameter because it doesn't feel right going through my bridge hand, or vice versa. I can't use a smaller shaft diameter because it just flops around in my bridge hand. And yeah, that's one aspect of it, but honestly, that's something that can be overcome a lot easier than trying to fix your stroke. How it feels is one thing, but how you're stroking is another. Anyway, I think I hit enough on this one. Again, these little videos that I'm doing like this, typically this video is meant, this channel is meant to show aspiring cue makers how to build cues, from one aspect to another. But I have found that information like this also helps the potential cue maker to understand what needs to be in the shafts that they're building. It also helps the end user, the player, understand what shaft to be using, what shaft to pick for them. I hope this helps. If you would like to see specific videos, let me know. I'll try to create some for you. And until next time, I'm gonna get out of here. I gotta get back to work, start building some more cues. But if you would, please take the time to subscribe, like it, leave us a comment, share it to your friends. This is 100% free. This is knowledge that we have taken years and years to develop, and we are giving it away for free. Please take the time to subscribe, and if there's anything that you'd like to have me discuss or talk about, a specific topic, preferably one topic, put it in the comments, and I'll respond to you. More than likely, I have no problem with doing a video on that. So yeah, if you have a certain topic that's been on your brain, you've been trying to figure it out and you can't work it out, put it in the comments. I'll do a video for you. Until then, like, subscribe, share. Have a good day. I appreciate it very much, and thanks for watching, guys. I hope you find it informative and beneficial. Thanks a lot.